pull up my copy of the agenda. Ooh, it is all in dark mode. Well, that'll be fun. All right. We'll come to order. We've, I think, 2 presentations today. One from Kumar during confidential session, and one from Ben about our long-range plan. So we'll be jumping into that pretty soon. If you're a current board member, please also review the student care NDA that is in the board chat. As for us to make decisions about that, we need enough eyes on it. So that's maybe all of you already have seen it, but if you have not, please give that a perusal so that we're able to submit fee changes to the Board of Governors meeting upcoming so that it can get approved for September, et cetera, et cetera. Did I miss anything with that one? Oh, we already know. Oh. Got it.
Yeah, thanks.
Was there anything else in preliminaries today? I think that was the important ones there. Okay, well, with that, then can I get a motion to approve the agenda? I see Aria and I see Teresa. Any discussion on the agenda today, board? Which I think has a long-range plan, SLEF, and some things in confidential. All right, seeing none, we'll take the vote on that. All in favor of the agenda? Oh, we got Fossil as well. Are you in favor of the agenda?
Yes, I am. Sorry, and food has been sent out. Please check your stuff.
All right. That seems to pass. Maricini, how do you vote on the agenda today?
In favor.
Thank you. Sorry, I just didn't see your hand. All right. Well then, Board of Directors of the Waterloo Undergraduate Student Association acknowledges that the University of Waterloo is on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Ottawadarun peoples. Our organization operates on the Haldeman Tract, land promised 6 miles on both sides of the on both sides of the Grand River, promised to the 6 nations. We begin with approval of minutes. We have minutes of the previous board meeting. That was April 16th, 2025. I'll move that. Can I get a seconder? Thank you, Aria. Any discussion on the minutes? All right, seeing none, we'll take the vote. All in favor of the minutes as presented? We got J2. This is a really good turnout for last board meeting.
Do you think so little of us?
Oh yeah, no, this is how we voted. Yeah. All against the minutes as presented. And all abstentions. I will abstain that one. I did not read them. So our main board priorities for today are long-range planning. Wow. And board organizational accountability. Wonderful. I do not think we have any items for consent today. Cool. So we'll start with the long-range plan draft. Alex, I'm going to assume you are moving this, and we'll invite Ben to speak in a moment. Does that make sense? Sick. Anyone want to second Alex for the long-range plan? Sure, Teresa. And I think we'll turn over the floor to you, Ben.
Excellent. Okay. Let me pull up a screen share. Entire screen. Share. Everybody seeing a blue slide? Looks good. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me. This is a nostalgic throwback for me. I'm rocking my Feds gear, which Melissa will not be happy about. But really excited to present the long-range plan draft today. Many familiar faces around the room, those of you who've been involved in our process. So eager to, again, have you speak into the purpose of it and the meaning of it as well, and we can kind of sentiment together. I'm going to give probably about like 15 to 20 minutes, just give you the high level context, run through the draft as well and call it the highlights of it. And then we'll spend some time with questions and discussion around it. So if you're following along, if you have a pen and paper, you can write down questions that you have, and then we'll circle back and make sure we spend time with those. So before I get to the draft itself, I just want to walk through a little bit of context of our process, but I also want to call out sort of what the long-range plan is and give you some context. So for those of you who are part of the building of this, I use this image right off the start to talk about what strategic planning can kind of feel like. And I want to call that out for this group as well, because strategic planning it works in a way that our brains typically don't, and it can feel uncomfortable. There's lots of big ambiguous questions. There's lots of things to wrestle with, and there's really no right answers, which can sometimes feel really uncomfortable. And by bringing multiple voices around the table, we can clarify that complexity and de-risk our process. And that's what we've done throughout. So a long-range plan, as we have talked about it, as the organization thinks about it, is high-level strategic direction for the next 5 years of the organization. And I'll call out the pieces around, there are some pieces that live longer than the long-range plan, and ideally those remain solidified for the foreseeable future. And we can have conversations about that. There is an element here of balancing flexibility and tangibility. So Damien, you actually gave a really great example when we were doing some of the refinement around when we're creating advocacy strategies. It's difficult in the lead up to get too specific because the context can change and all those different pieces. So this long-range plan, or a long-range plan or a strategic plan, serves the same purpose. It gives us that high level direction, but it builds in flexibility. And there's a little bit of ambiguity there, so that on a year by year or moment by moment basis, we can adapt to the context. I will also call out, and I'll contrast what this long-range plan is in comparison to your annual plans or your annual action plans. I believe this board just went through the action planning process and has approved that. That process will continue even within the lifespan of this long-range plan. On a yearly basis, staff will come back to the new and current board to, based on the long-range plan, approve annual action plans through that. And that's where that like really tactical project-based work will come from. We've done a little bit of that work in this, and I'll show you a little bit under the hood of that. But that's where that piece lives. And then I do really want to call out, this long-range plan isn't necessarily a full capture of all the activities and priorities of WUSA. It is a guiding document for the next 5 years, and it is definitely flexible. Again, calling out that flexibility and tangibility piece, it's meant to be big enough that we can house many different things within it as our context and reality shifts over time. So what did our process look like? Back in January, we did a project kickoff and we did some engagement planning. Through February and into March, we did some broad environmental scanning and we did some stakeholder engagement. Some of you were involved in street teams, and there was multiple pieces there, and I actually have some more fine-grained detail on that below. March 21st, a large group of us came together for a long-range planning retreat where we really kind of started and built the key elements of the plan. And then throughout March and into April here, we came back together multiple times to refine and build out the other pieces of the plan. And we also did some validation work. So we went back out with our prototype that we built at the retreat. And we said, hey, what do you think? And we were able to connect with some students and other stakeholders within your ecosystem. So engagement insights and document review. We broke this into 2 phases. So the first one was exploratory. Again, that was the February, March piece, the first piece. That's where we went broad. We said, hey, what should this be? It was very open-ended. It was quite qualitative. And then the second phase was that validation phase. So we had that March retreat. We built a prototype, and then we went back out and tested it. And we really focused in on mission, vision, and values, and then the plan vision as well. As I mentioned, there was 3 teams, so 196 different students or touch points along the way in that one. We did some informational interviews. These were staff to get staff perspective as well. And then we did an in-depth dive on a ton of the really great research that's already been done by the organization in terms of the different impact reports that are created. And that was a big part of our document scanning in those spaces. In the validation phase, again, some interviews. We also did a virtual engagement lab. We were able to get club executives around the table to get their input. And then we also, again, did those refinement working sessions with staff leadership and the outgoing, both members of incoming and outgoing employee. So lots of engagement, lots of student voice, and lots of student input all the way through. So co-designing the plan, what does that mean? Aria, I have to call you out. There's a great photo here of you during the retreat. So what did we do? During that retreat, we literally built the pieces that you see in the plan. So we built in the background here, up in the sort of top middle, those are the objectives that we shaped together. Again, they were a rough draft, but we've refined them. And then we had a big conversation about the mission and vision. So we defined, hey, what do we mean by serve? What do we mean by empower and represent? And we also articulated a vision statement for the organization. Oops. So I just want to give you a chance to see sort of visually what's in the plan, and then we'll unpack it in more detail. So the vision, mission, and values, those are organization-wide. Those are the pieces that ideally should live beyond the lifespan of the long-range plan. Those are sort of foundational building blocks of the organization and give you the scope and structure of what you do and how you do it. The plan vision, so this is limited to the lifespan of the plan, so the next 5 years. And then our strategic objectives, those are specific destinations that we want to get to. And then we also built out key results. And just to give you again, I mentioned sort of a peek under the hood. So actually, if I go this way, you can sort of see this is a Miro board. And for those of you who are involved, this is all the back end work. There was a ton of it. Again, as we moved sort of left to right, we did different iterations of the plan and we built it out. Again, we didn't want to overload you with that much content, but here's a sort of a glimpse of what's underneath here. So our objectives, the description, the key results, and then the action plans. When we're talking about annual action plans, staff are going to come back to this work year after year. Not necessarily exactly these things, but this will be what they pull from to develop those action plans. And again, each board will have an opportunity to review that moving forward. So, see if I can move forward. Here we go. Okay, so I'm about to switch over to the actual draft. As you're listening, just some helpful prompts. What's standing out? So thinking about keywords or phrases or themes. What questions do you have? And a really, really important one here is there anything here that you are uncomfortable moving forward with? So again, at the end of this discussion, we're going to be asking you to vote in favor or against the long-range plan. And a good way to think about your role in all of this is making sure that, yeah, again, is there anything here that you are uncomfortable moving forward with based on what you've read and seen? So those of you following along, I'm going to switch over now to that draft document. So right away, you see the title of the long-range plan. So turning capacity into impact, empowering student voice, building community, and leading change. Again, this is like the big headline, the big title of the plan, and we're going to unpack that in just a little bit. There we go. So let's first land on the organizational vision statement. So this is an aspirational change that you want to make out in the world, or a future state that you want to create. It should feel slightly out of reach, as it should stretch the organization to try to achieve it. Again, this is like the big goal that the organization is striving for. We've articulated ours, although it reads like a simple sentence, there is a ton baked in here. So the university vision, or the WUSA's vision statement reads as currently a university experience where every member has the opportunity to thrive. So some notes on that. You'll notice that we've used the word member. So again, this is part of an ongoing sort of shift in the organization to start speaking about students as members, again, as owners as well, helping students to feel a sense of ownership of the organization, a sense of that they have a stake in what's going on. I'll also call out the word opportunity here. So lots of big conversations behind the scenes as we're building this out around this being self-deterministic, this being around creating a rich environment where students, again, can choose that path that makes the most sense for them. And then the word thrive, again, really important to call out. We landed here because it is self-defined, right? So each member should have the opportunity to define what thriving is, and we're not being prescriptive about that. And it will be different for each individual, but again, the goal of WUSA is to create the environment and the opportunities for your members to thrive here in their university experience. So that's your big goal. Your mission statement is what you do, a little bit about who you do it for and how you do it. And it's about like what you do in service to your vision or your goal. What's the activity of the organization? So here there's a lot more to kind of digest. We actually barely changed the mission statement. So it used to read to serve, empower, and represent. We changed that to we, again, to just be more direct, more possessive of it. So we serve, empower, and represent the undergrad students of the University of Waterloo. And then we've built it out by adding these supporting definitions. So again, before it just highlighted serve, empower, and represent. And while those are really powerful and really accurate descriptions of what we do, we gave these as descriptions and definitions so that we can continue to understand the scope and the work that WUSA is doing. So you can imagine for staff and for future student leaders, they can take this mission statement and use it as a test case for when they're thinking about, hey, do we want to take something on? Okay, what bucket does it fall into, or does it fall into these buckets? And you can use this as a bit of a filter to understand the work that's going on. And then I really do want to call out as well a couple of key words and phrases within each of these. So specifically in empower, the like second sentence there. So through advocacy, self-representation, and support, again, you're sort of seeing some of the key themes coming up. And then this idea of like the future of campus life, this is like a big theme throughout the entire plan of like getting students involved in shaping the future. And then within represent, the main one here is probably the last portion of that definition. So it's, we ensure students are heard, respected, prioritized, and treated fairly at every table. So there was a big conversation around sort of academic fairness and where does that land in all of this? And there's a big piece that lands there as well. So our organizational values. So vision, big goal that we want to achieve. Mission, what we do to get there, how we go about achieving our goal. Values are the behaviors, principles, and ways that you show up for each other and for your interest holders. So this is the how. This is how we go about our work. So again, these should feel extremely familiar because they were repurposed from the brand promises that were created and were posted on the website. As we got our validation feedback, so originally I had kind of looked at all of these and we were actually just going to go with the original values. But as we got validation feedback, there was actually some concern about those values. So we started to look at the promises and felt like they really actually read as values and really captured a lot of what we did. So what we actually did is we did an analysis of the current values. And we said, is there anything missing? Is there anything not covered in if we were to repurpose these promises as values? So again, I called out that academic fairness piece, and we embedded that in the mission statement. And then you'll also see it in the advocacy piece later on. And then the only other sort of minor change that we made was within responsive and adaptable. We added the idea of innovation into it. And really, this is innovation actually taking hold of student ideas and student energy and student creativity to innovate in them. So, organizational vision, big goal that you're trying to achieve. Mission, what you do to try to achieve it. Organizational values is how you go about your day-to-day, how you show up in the world, and how you do those things. Your plan vision, we're narrowing in, is about this is the next 5 years. This is the journey that the organization is going on for the next 5 years. And again, this is calling back to that title that we saw at the beginning. So turning capacity into impact, empowering student voice, building community, and leading change. So the big strategic narrative, the big things that were coming out of our engagement, what we were hearing from students, and what we were hearing, even as we dove into a lot of the, again, great research and impact reports that have come out, was around how WUSA has really grown in the last little while. They've built a ton of capacity and strength. And that is coinciding and actually matching up brilliantly with a both disruptive but also opportunity-rich moment in the outside context. So post-secondary sector undeniably going through disruption in so many different ways. Students in their own lives facing increased complexity, increased pressure. Where is WUSA's role in all of that? And really, if the last, 5, maybe even 10 years of WUSA has been around strengthening itself, about building a foundation, they're now at a point you're now at a point where you can really start to leverage that foundation and create even more impact within student lives. And I would also say, helping students actually define the decisions that are shaping their lives. So helping them to step in that space. So, okay, that's a big lofty goal. That's a journey that we're going to go on. What's that journey going to look like? What are the destinations that we're going to get to along the way? So this is a strategic planning framework that we really appreciate. It's called Objectives and Key Results, or OKRs. So our objective is a destination that we're going to reach. You can think about it if you're going on a road trip. We want to get to North Bay, for example. A key result is signposts along the way to our destination. So you would imagine, hey, we're going to have to go through Barrie. We're going to have to continue up the 400. We know where we're headed. That way this is one way for us to track progress towards these towards our long range plan goals. So at a glance, again, the big plan vision, the journey that you're on, these are the strategic objectives. These are the different destinations that you're going to hit and that you're planning to reach. The first one, better understand what students need and be known for it. Number 2, strengthen student trust, voice, and impact in WUSA. And number 3, revitalize social life and belonging at Waterloo. Number 4, strengthen operational monitoring and student-focused partnerships. 5, be a place people are proud to work. Jeez, can't read. Number 6, advocate for the collective interests of students. Let's unpack those. I'm not going to read the whole page here, but objective 1, I'll just call out some key words or phrases here. So again, you can kind of see the breakdown. So you have your objective, which is our end destination, and then the key results, which are our signposts along the way. So you can imagine the reporting on some of this. So, hey, objective 1, we've completed, key result 1.2. And we can report that to the board. We can report that to our membership based on the work that we've done. The key results here read, we will clarify and define the relationship between WUSA and UW. It kind of came to light during the retreat. Hey, we have an operating agreement with the university that is vastly outdated. What would it look like, and how would it be useful for us to do something like that and create that? So underneath this, in the key initiatives or the actual projects, one of those projects is, hey, take on the renegotiation of that. That's a good example of what one of those projects would look like. Key result number 2, go-to insight source. So be a go-to insight source, and you can kind of see there, our staff, student leaders, campus partners consistently relying on WUSA's insights. We can call out some different ways that we might achieve that. And then feedback and action. That's objective number 1. Number 2, strengthen student trust, voice, and impact in WUSA. This one for me is kind of summed up in that second sentence. So this objective focuses on building deeper relationships between WUSA and students, rooted in openness, representation, and shared purpose. Again, we have to have trust and transparency for us to start creating impact together. And this is all about trying to build those things. So what's some of the work that we're going to do? We're going to break down barriers in the boardroom. I think some of the pieces under here were about, hey, are we continuing to use Robert's rules? Do we need to reevaluate some of those procedures? Even something as simple as moving the location of board meetings to a different location so it feels more accessible. Clear and credible. We need to make sure that students see how decisions are being made and how their input is used and how WUSA holds itself accountable. And then space for student voice. Supporting open dialogue, critical discourse, There's some pieces here around journalism, advocacy, and outreach. And these are actively supported and reflected in WUSA's work. Number 3, revitalize social life and belonging at Waterloo. The key results here, social infrastructure that works. Again, one of the conversations that we had was, hey, this doesn't need to be net new work. The long range plan doesn't actually need to be all net new, and actually embedded in throughout all of this are actually a lot of things that are already on the go. We're just codifying them here. A perfect example of that is the SLC plan, already created, already done, had a ton of student input and is working towards those things. So, one of the key pieces that we're going to try to achieve is, achieving 50%, for example, of the SLC plan by a certain time period, and we can track that progress. 3.2, events that slap. We're a little confused there. But we actually really like that because there's an element here of, and we all know this, that events build community. It's an important way for students to feel welcomed and excited and connected. Student groups that thrive. Again, there's a whole list of different projects and initiatives that we can work on and targets that we can set for ourselves to help student groups thrive throughout, and recognizing that as an important way that WUSA can directly support students. And then we talked about creating a shared roadmap for campus life. So this is, again, a little bit of like doing some planning, doing some road mapping. What does it look like for a student to come on to campus? Where can they go? Is there a quick hit resource for them to understand the lay of the land? We want to create something like that. Number 4, strengthen operational monitoring and student-focused partnerships. This one has Kumar written all over it. This is about us tracking. This is about us making sure that we are monitoring our performance and we are listening to student feedback, certainly within our commercial operations, but also more broadly across the organization. So being a market leader in product, again, really focused in on that commercial service piece. That is a core pillar of what WUSA does and how WUSA enables many of the other things that it does as well. Expanded network of partnerships. We talked about, for example, the GRT, Grand River Transit. They have come directly to WUSA to get feedback and partner and collaborate with us on projects that they're working on. Why can't we do that with more folks? And that's a way, when we talk about an organization that is over mandated, i.e. they have too much to do and under resourced, a great way for you to increase your impact is through partnership. And I would definitely think that WUSA is in that space. And then unlocking student economies of scale. This was a fun conversation around, hey, what does it look like for us to use to explore cooperatives? I know that it says co-ops there, and it's been flagged to me that will, and if it's a friendly amendment, we'll make an edit there to be cooperatives instead of co-ops, just so that there's no confusion around that. But this is about, hey, how do we unlock student buying power? How do we help students actually, have more control and more access even outside of campus? Thinking about things like housing and all those different pieces. Number 5, be a place people are proud to work. This goes, of course, there's lots in here around the full-time staff or specifically staff, but there's a ton built in here around supporting students and identifying clear pathways for them to go from that part-time job into something bigger than WUSA. And again, understanding that the staff complement at WUSA is what enables the organization. It's the muscle, the person power to really get it done. So taking care of that foundational piece is really important, and that's called out here. And sustainable work culture. clear growth pathways, and that we do some succession planning around key members of the staff. And then our final objective is advocate for the collective interests of students. Now, there's some nuance within this conversation here. This objective is really the how. This is how we want to build our capacity and our ability to advocate, and how we want to go about that advocating. We'll jump to a lower slide, which is more around the what. What are we advocating for? So this one here, the key results within it, that our strategic advocacy priorities are identified and socialized. So let's identify them and let's make sure people understand that those are the things that we are working towards. That our capacity is strengthened to do timely and student-led advocacy. So we recognize an opportunity that, hey, it doesn't necessarily always need to be WUSA leading the charge. What does it look like for us to empower students and enable students to lead those advocacy efforts? And then we'll also know that we've achieved this objective if we're able to demonstrate collective advocacy influence. And this is, seeing clear wins within our advocacy portfolios and our priorities. So again, all of this is a way of tracking progress towards that objective, saying, hey, we have advocated for the collective interests of students. So if that was the how, here's the what. So there's a bunch of text there. Basically what it says is, these are the priorities that we have heard the most about. Again, this is like very fresh student input. I believe the advocacy department was asking students about this within the last couple months. And this is an early look at some of those priorities as they came out. The biggest key here is we know that this isn't all of it. This isn't a full capture of that list. And again, as we continue to live out the plan, as we go through year by year the work, there's room and space to add different advocacy priorities. So for example, the last list included COVID-19. Fingers crossed, we don't have to add that back. But that's a perfect example of, in the current context, that was a major priority. We needed to include it there. Here, definitely top of the list is affordability and cost of living. Not more important than any others, but one that we hear a lot. And then lastly, and I'll stop talking at you, measuring and reporting on our work. So I talked about how the OKRs, objectives and key results, are one way for us to track our progress. So one of the nice features of this long-range plan that we've built for you is that you actually have multiple different ways to track progress and report on progress. So you can envision a bit of a dashboard. Hey, objective 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the different key results and the associated projects and plans. Those are, not started, in progress, complete. Those are simple, like check, yes, we're done it, or no, we're not. The second measurement tool is strategic metrics, and those will be accompanied, coming along with your annual plans as well, in order to, again, track some steady state metrics or KPIs around that. And then we've given you just a really high level and a very draft example of what those metrics might look like. Again, some of this was pulled from the discussions that we were having at the retreat and during our refinement sessions. Other pieces are, for example, the yearly WUSA impact reports. That's reporting that you're already doing. No need to reinvent the wheel. You're already doing a bunch of things. So that is it from me. Would love to take any comments, questions, if there's something that you'd like to hear clarity on. I'm all yours.
First of all, thank you very much, Ben. I I guess I'll start us off with one question, which is, we had tons and tons of other discussion about more detail about key results, including timeline. Are we going to be releasing that, or is that mostly being used internal as well? Is this slideshow all the information that we'll be putting out, or are we also going to be including timelines and sort of goals like that as well?
So overlaps deliverables will be sort of this slide deck will produce a one-page summary, and will also produce sort of what we would call like a full capture public document. That will essentially be the content that's on the slide deck, but in a nice, when you think about the last long range plan, that PDF that's nicely visually designed, we'll deliver one like that. The timeline pieces, we can capture some of that. We'll do like sort of a full capture of just like a Word doc, but that will be internal facing. Okay. And then I would imagine in your different annual plan and action plans, it's those types of spaces where the timeline feasibility, again, comes back to the surface.
All right.
Yeah.
Questions and comments for Ben or the rest of the long range planning team? Oh, yeah.
Can I make a comment? Oh, never mind. Let's just go first.
I recall in one of the refinement sessions, it was mentioned that the team was out doing student validation. I'm curious what sort of insights we gleaned from showing our work in progress to students. What did you hear and what did we change about the plan?
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of positive feedback around the vision and mission. People appreciated the fact that we built out some definitions for serve, empower, represent. They found that brought clarity. I kind of mentioned a little bit already that the values created a bit of confusion, and people, some of the feedback that we got was actually to the point of, hey, these values actually create some risk for the organization, because some of these pieces, there's some ambiguity whether it should be WUSA delivering these things or responsible or accountable for these things versus the university. So for example, one of them was, we maintain a fair and responsible academic environment. I think WUSA has a role to play, but it's not their ultimate responsibility and accountability. So it was pieces like that where there was, that was some of the feedback that we were getting, and maybe it wasn't necessarily coming to us in that, stated that way, but we were able to interpret that that was what was creating some confusion and some lack of fit. And then in terms of the planned vision, again, a lot of the feedback was like, okay, like this lands, this is fine, but tell us how you're going to do it. And of course, at that point, it was still in rough draft. We were still kind of building it out in the background. What I will say is advice that we give to organizations all the time is, it matters what's in here. This is the what of the work, but maybe what matters even more is how you go about implementing it. And just because we've, used an engagement-based and heavy process throughout, doesn't mean that you should stop engaging and having conversations about these types of things. Like, I would encourage the organization to find different ways and modalities for you to actually, again, once this is now finalized, to take this back out to students, gather their feedback, understand where their priorities lie in all of this, so you can continue to get that feedback. Hopefully that's helpful, Jeff, and happy to answer more questions if you have them.
Yeah, that's a pretty comprehensive answer. Thanks. I'll kick it to Arya.
Awesome. I just want to say, you guys did a lot of hard work, so thank you. And I think thank you to the folks in the committee, specifically Alex, who put a lot of hours in as chair to make sure this goes through as well. So very happy to endorse the motion, and I think it's a very good plan across the board.
New board, I know there's some concerns from engagement there. I'm hoping that you're less worried now. Any sort of thoughts along content or direction that you don't think has been captured or that you think has been captured particularly well? Kanji.
Oh, we can't hear you.
Looks like no comments then. Wonderful. Is that Rem? Hi. What's your question, Remington?
So I was more worried about this until you said there's going to be a different public copy, but uh, two sides to it. The tone of this copy seems very internal. And the lack of, I think in some places lack of specifics and in some places too much specifics. I think this is going to go right over students' heads. I think we need to better explain why some of these things matter to students and use language that they care about and understand. And mention specifics that students care about rather than like more. And I understand the worry with kind of getting too specific with specific ask student have, but I think we need to ground in what students want.
Yeah, I think like one of the ways that we've done this in the past, like you sort of saw this slide here. You know, again, there's like a ton of different specific projects or what we would call key initiatives built out underneath each of these. Sometimes in plans we would put like this might look like, and then sort of at a high level list some of those things. Again, it's all about like finding a balance of like not, like you said, like completely sending things over students' head and making sure that they feel like they can actually unpack it and engage with it. So yeah, very, very much like, again, I think WUSA as well, and probably yourselves will have the ability to say, hey, we want more of this or less of that. And we're happy to provide that here within like the scope of our work as well. But yeah, it really is like one of the, again, I'll say like, we'll provide you basically with like a 1 or a 2-page version, which is sort of like your high level, like executive summary basically. And then we provide you with, again, the content that you see here will be embedded in that draft or in that final copy, but basically like a PDF version of what you're seeing in the slide deck. So, and then the organization can make a call whether they want to go public with that versus the other. Do annual action plans public? You go public with those things?
I don't remember, we do, yeah.
Yeah. So again, like thinking about, there's an element here of like thinking about the long range plan as a part of the system that you have in place to do planning and to communicate about planning. So this part is sort of the capstone for the next 5 years. And then each year students have an opportunity to have input and to shape and then to see the full build out of that action plan, which like, again, goes real deep on all the specifics. Again, happy to have other comments here as well. Yeah, go ahead.
For the advocacy side, I noticed they are very broad, and in the 2020-25 version, I noticed they were very drilled into that. Is the reason we've decided to go for a more broad area? Were these topics from the discussions with students, or how were they, or RSPs? How were they formed?
Yeah, I think I'll make a high level comment, and then I'll welcome anyone else to jump in here as well, because there's lots of people who have more context than I do. What you're seeing here in the long range plan, I think, is the it's the result of kind of the timing of this work lining up. So again, I kind of mentioned that WUSA has been going through this process of gathering input on what those advocacy priorities have been, and I've seen a draft version of the report on that. And we had lots of conversations about, is this the place, i.e. the long range plan, where those things need to be built out? Or is there an opportunity to actually create other resources, other advocacy plans or strategies that get far more fine-grained and detailed? So at this point, this was the like sort of extent of things that we wanted to point to and call out. We could, you know, create some quick like paragraph summaries of these things, but this is kind of where we landed. And yeah, I mean, Melissa, I don't know if you're still on the call, but it looks like Ariel. And
I could add some.
Yeah.
This was actually a comment I made very similarly. We had the conversation of like, should advocacy plans live here? Like, will the data we're using on these plans be relevant in 5 years' time? Like when things change, because advocacy changes really quickly and students' issues change very quickly. I think as a good note, I think the conclusion was that it's better to keep it more broad, to give the board of the year more capacity to dive deep into issues. If you highly specify on housing, like go over these very particular issues, that limits them because they have to act within the 5-year plan.
Mhm.
So keeping it broad so they have more capacity to use, you know, up-to-date data
Mhm.
when they make the decisions and focus on the issues 3 years from now. That might be more relevant to what our team is dealing with right now.
Do you have a direct response, or is this a new point?
It's kind of a direct response. I don't know if Mohan's was.
I'm pretty sure Mo's is a new point.
Okay. I was just gonna say when it comes to like the specificity of the advocacy point in particular, like Mario was saying, is advocacy can oftentimes be very opportunistic in the sense that which makes it so maybe you don't want to get too specific, but there is maybe a point here because students might look at this and be like, how the hell are you going to tackle stuff like affordability and cost of living? So maybe something that worth including is like avenues that we might look at to do stuff like this when it comes to like building relationships, or when it comes to co-op, we might be like we engage with the CEC, or which you know it exists in some sense. But like this is stuff that might be worth including to at least get students idea that it's not just talk, which is might address some of the issues that people see when they want to be more specific.
Yeah.
Takanshi, does your microphone work now?
No,
it's
If you type it up, I'll read it out loud for you though.
Can you call in?
There is an option, but I think the roaming charges would be a lot.
That's really funny.
1 a.m. right now.
Sean.
Just make a general. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Sweet. I'll just make a general comment. I know a lot of the purpose of this long-range plan is in that broad intent to build it out, because when it comes to us, we're able to then shape it and refine it to how students see it. So a huge part of this long-range plan that I'm really excited for, and I know a lot of people are really excited for, is the fact that it's sort of like a living document that's really meant to be around and have those annual plans feed up into it, have action plans feed into it that can sort of clearly shape out more clear deliverables, and that would feed into our initiatives that then feed up into our objectives, and then so on and so forth. So there are definitely ways that future board, like the one in this room and years to come, will be able to individually sort of chisel out their own initiatives that builds up and feeds into that long-range plan.
Comment and the new board when we get into our year is maybe it'll be prudent for us to like kind of send out formal like every 6 months. We look at it or something like that, or staff do report how KPIs are doing, and when next year transition, they go together, go through the new thing so everyone knows it, just to make sure when we're doing that living document that there's kind of more formal like standards of how we review it. Just a thought I want to share.
Let's try Mac once again.
Is this working?
Yay!
That is great. All right. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. So my question is so Ben, you mentioned that we're going to have you're going to compile a sort of public version entailing a summary, perhaps a 2-page document. How are we going to compile our targets in a comprehensive manner in which students are going to sort of understand and see what we're going to be working on for the next 5 years, and sort of on a student level and on a basis that they're going to sort of understand and relate to?
Yeah, excellent question. I think, or hopefully, the intention is that part of that target, part of those, part of the, understanding of the work is actually baked into the objectives and key results. So the objectives being those big, broad buckets that we want to achieve, things we want to achieve. And then the key results, again, being, indicators of progress towards those big objectives. And there's a little bit of like socialization of the framework that's used in the long range plan as well, so that people, when they look at it, they understand that what they're seeing is actually and that it is actually the progress is built right into it, or the reporting on it. Some organizations build a dashboard or some sort of reporting mechanism on something like this. I'm not sure the person's name over here that just talked about like, hey, we should build in some sort of like repeating reporting structure. Absolutely, that is standard practice for an organization that has really strong governance practice. And I would call out the other invitation, I think, for the organization is to refine and clarify those metrics as they continue to build out their annual action plan. If you want to actually take some of those metrics and tie them to the plan more broadly, have them like talked about as more like main features of the plan, you're welcome to do that. However, typically in our processes, we don't prescribe that for an organization. I think, again, for you as like specifically for incoming board, like I think it's within your mandate to say, hey, wait, this is a metric of impact that we really care about, and we want to hear about that reporting. So again, we've given you some early examples of what those might look like, but I think you can have some creative conversations about how that looks. Hopefully, sorry, Mohammed, that was a very long-winded answer, but please jump back in here. I see your hand up.
No, 100%. It was a great answer, and I guess to ensure I'm on the same page. So from what I'm getting, it's more of, as each year the board rolls around, we're going to look at the 5-year long range plan and sort of piece together our advocacy priorities based on the key results and the objectives, and then from that develop sort of our plans and our goals. And then I guess your suggestion here is making a sort of a track board or a tracking system to sort of look at it in the long term in terms of specific priorities, whether they be advocacy or commercial, and then use that as an indicator across the 5 years. Is that what I'm sort of getting at? Yeah, exactly. That's again, depending on the client that we're working with. I don't want this to sound too salesy, but some of the work that we also do is actually helping with the development of that type of dashboard and implementation. So again, like happy to kind of coach, and if that's something of interest, can give a couple examples as well. If that's, I have a couple templates that I can send along with what we have, and you can kind of build from that. Yeah. Thanks. Any other questions, comments? Alex has a big old smile on his face.
Wonderful.
Oh, I think Jeff said he had one more.
Yeah, Jeff, you had a concluding thought?
It's mostly fluff, so I wanted to let all the actual concerns not take up time. But sort of having seen bits and pieces of the process. Huge shout out to everyone that worked on it. Alex, SLT, other members of the committee, and I think this strategic plan is night and day from. Our long range plan is night and day from what we've had in the past, and especially clarity wise, because I think I've seen that be a pain point for us in the past. And we're headed in a clear direction with this. So thank you very much to everyone.
Well, then, with that, I guess we take the vote. All in favor of approving the draft long range plan and the long range plan with corrections forthcoming. Ooh.
Funny if you come get I think it's
Really funny. I love that. Oh, Alex is just raised.
Alex got both.
Said. And the only person who I have to ask is Jay. Jay, what's your vote? Is it an abstain, Jay? I'll abstain. Ooh, all right. Well, then all against.
I didn't step away from the left.
Yeah. Okay. Knowing Jay is probably the abstain, he walked away. So
Both wasn't important.
yeah, just don't count it. Well, thank you very much, Ben. We look forward to having a PDF that we can then submit on the socials.
Amazing. Congratulations. Big shout out to Alex. Thanks for all your help throughout and leadership. Yeah, tremendous.
And may I briefly say thank you to Ben and Rania and everyone at Overlap and SLT. I just want to thank formally on the call our wonderful consultants. I don't know much about consulting or other long range plans, but it's safe to say it was probably the best one we've had. Maybe a biased take, whatever. Post that on your website, but very, very good. Very, very
We'll come to you for a Google review.
Very
With
good.
that, we move on to Student Life Endowment Fund changes. Be it resolved, the board approves the draft governing document for the University of Waterloo Student Life Endowment Fund and the Equity, Opportunity, and Innovation Fund as presented. This is moved by Jeff. Do we have a seconder for Jeff? I saw Aria first. Jeff, I'll give you a moment to discuss the endowment fund.
Thanks, Nick. I'll keep. So for some quick context, there's in the document, the first page I think does explain a quick summary, but SLEF, their governing documents have been outdated for a couple of years, not only due to the WUSA restructure, but a couple of other pieces that have just more or less fallen into disrepair over the years. So this governing docs refresh has been an ongoing process really for about the past year and a half. We've gotten some feedback from the university and worked it into the latest draft. And so we're just looking for WUSA board to approve it so we can ship this over to the University Board of Governors. And SLEF is the Student Life Endowment Fund, where we students contribute money every term and we pay out of the funds generated.
Oh no.
It's not that.
Okay.
I just wanted to note like that it's going to need to go back to the university before it goes to the Board of Governors, because the university is looking at whether the Board of Governors is the right mechanism moving forward for that approval process to happen. So it may come back here just with that slight change, but they've seen the rest of the content. So
Quick question, does this change anything from how we did it this year? Or is it just the exact same way but formalized?
Nick, may I answer?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
The only difference there is adding in sort of restoring the board of directors. They only need to meet, say, once a year to set the funding amount. That's their main function, control the amounts of funding that the council is allowed to spend. Apart from that, no, it runs pretty much de facto how we've been doing for the past year.
It just makes it independent. Very cool.
Any further questions on SLEF EOI? Cool. Well, don't need to dilly-dally. We'll take the vote. All in favor of the Student Life Endowment Fund, Equity, Opportunity, and Innovation Fund bylaws and governing documents? We have also online Jeff, Matthew, and Fatima in favor. And Siobhan, sorry, Alex as well. And Marichini. All abstaining on this item. I will abstain on this item.
You can read it or?
I have some mixed feelings. I'm mostly happy, but like I'm not going to vote against it because I do think it's an improvement, but I don't think it's perfect. And all against. I see none. So wonderful. Move to the next side of the agenda. Congratulations, Jeff, and other
Yeah.
EOI.
Good job, Dan.
I think we have unfinished business. So do we have public reports? This is a bit of a weird one because it's a special meeting, so we're good.
Is there anything else in the agenda then?
Yeah, the confidential stuff.
Oh,
Oh, actually, I do have one thing, which is for new board to decide, which among yourselves, let me know by tomorrow morning. Which one of you, and if you can't decide, I'll pick Damien. We'll sit on the hiring committee for the assistant ombudsperson. Is it?
should be the first.
That is it. For the, I will just say for the coming board, the form that we sent out does have that on there, so.
And you must like it.
I think so.
I would have, like, why they hire him?
Assistant ombudsperson.
Why? With all the cuts and stuff,
It was part of the original plan from a while back.
do that is strange to give them all that.
Well, we covered half their salary, right?
I know what you're saying, but I'm also.
Yeah. This has been planned from
Yeah, I know.
a while ago, but yeah.
So there's one more hiring and then they cap it, right? Well, for now, until
They might also have a case manager, but I think that's the end of it.
Well, that's pretty good for us. Like the deal, not makes them overrule.
Okay, figure it out. Let me know. Hopefully.
Like that leader.
Yeah, like, wait a minute.
Figure it out amongst yourselves, let me know. Anyways, we should move to confidential session. So Marianne, let me know when that is the case. During confidential session, and it was about improving a partnership with the New York Times. So we got some money set aside. We'll be paying for subscriptions. Very cool. That part I felt was okay. I didn't go into any of the details that we're not supposed to. That was the rough summary. Anyways, they'll come down the line. So your membership will also pay for your ability to do the crossword every day. With that, I think we're come to adjournment. Any reason not to adjourn from any of the board members? Rory.
I'm just curious, when it comes to the time tracking / board pay situation, is there any update there?
This is a special meeting.
Yeah, so we have some kind of feedback from the lawyers that's tilting towards not like towing towards having the hourly rates payments, because first off, it moves it from being categorized as a honorarium. It would most likely fall into the category of the director's fee. And then if you look at it from the tax perspective, if you're calling it a director's fee, the directors are classified as officers in the Income Tax Act, and in that same act, the officers also come under employees. So what they said was that in as much as ONCAD might not really be aligned or have that definition of directors as employees in this context, they need to be careful around the tax implications and the interpretation in the Income Tax Act.
Yes.
So that's
I follow.
that is obviously something that needs to be taken into consideration. Oh, and should be the thing leading our decision. I believe in the original motion that was passed at AGM, like, I don't think hours are the one and only thing that decides on rare, like it's hours, effort. I forget exactly what it is now, but it's among other factors that honoraria should be decided. I guess more general question would be to the outgoing board of like, has that decision for what the honoraria they're paying themselves this month been decided at this point? And if not, is that a decision that then we would approve at our next board meeting?
So the board meeting before the EMM, it was tied, there was a timeline already provided for the directors to submit their hourly reports.
Yes.
And then that motion was tied to the decision that was made during EMM. So those that submitted their the hours they tracked for that timeline, and then based on Aria's motion that extended it to April 15, we've processed the payments already, but they've not received that yet because we had to wait for the last board meeting.
Actually, in general, for the potential hours that they worked after.
No, that would not be, because that would be more than an hour, a month already, if you're calculating, because it took into consideration like the beginning of March and to April 15th. So if we extend it further to this period, although based on Aria's motion, they would still track their hours anyway.
But it wouldn't have been.
Yeah.
They're not getting paid from the 15th to today. Like any work they did between that.
So the hours that qualified for the payments is from March to April 15th.
Are they getting paid for after April 15th? Like,
No.
okay, and then second part of this.
That was the last one.
Okay, do we know, starting in May, in 2 days we get on, do we know, so we don't know yet how our compensation is gonna work?
So that's an agenda item. Because you guys need to decide what.
You, and so this question governance wise, if it turns out it is not legal to have it hours based or whatever, then the AGM motion will just be void?
That's
The AGM motion actually made reference to getting feedback and consulting with lawyers. And,
Okay.
and like he said, it's kind of flexible because it's not tied to like hourly payments, like based on feedback we receive from lawyers, you decide how you want to structure it.
We'll find a loophole.
Hopefully find out soon.
No, that's a legal strategy.
Thank you. It's better.
I think that's it.
Okay, good night.